right, I will call our February meeting of Central Oklahoma Transportation and Parking Authority to order. We do have one item this morning, and it's a presentation by Jacobs Engineering on the status of our downtown streetcar project. I asked Jason if the City Council had seen this yet, and he said no, this was kind of a special presentation for the trustees, so I think we're all, I told Doug that we'd put it at the front of it because we're all attentive at the beginning, and some of you guys get a little weary at the end. So Doug Smith with Jacobs Engineering, if you'd like to come up and begin your presentation, I'd appreciate it.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, trustees. Good to be with you this morning. Appreciate the opportunity to update you on the streetcar project. There's been a lot of activity over the last 6 or 7 months since I believe you've had an update on the project. So I'll talk to you here for about 15 or 20 minutes, giving you background on everything that's been happening and giving you a little bit of a view forward. So as the screen comes down and we get our slides started, I'll just mention to you that we're on basically a 3.5-year look-ahead schedule from now until opening day. That's what we're planning on. We have about 13 months of design in front of us, pre-design and design, and then we'll go into a 2-year construction period followed by about 3 months of commissioning. That's after the vehicles arrive, the track is ready. We'll go into commissioning, and our goal is somewhere around the middle of 2018 to be able to have our opening day. So big picture, that's what we're looking ahead and looking forward to, and really everything we're talking about today has that goal in mind. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide, Michael. And so today's agenda includes updating you on the design status, and I'll give you an update then on the main line route so you understand where this thing is going. Talk to you about the stop locations, and then give you an update on the storage and maintenance facility status, which will be a big part of your operations. And then update you on the vehicles, the order of the vehicles, the manufacture of the vehicles, and talk to you a little bit about adjacent projects, because as you probably know, the streetcar touches a lot of other adjacent projects going both within the MAPS program and within Project 180 and other things as well. Then I'll give you an update on upcoming activities looking forward. So let's go ahead and move forward. On the design status, our main line is, which includes the track, the stops, the OCS, or the overhead contact system, or the overhead wire that you're going to see that powers the vehicle. That's included in the design. The TPSS, or the traction power substations, that's what's going to power the wire. There's going to be several of those along the line to electrify that wire. And then, of course, the changes to the traffic signals to allow the vehicle to move around through the intersection. So all that's included in that design. And we were authorized right at the end of December to proceed with the pre-design. And we have interim milestones over the next 4 months that we'll be looking towards. We'll be doing a traffic model, which means we'll be looking at the movement of the car through the intersections, and that'll help us figure out what we need to do to the signals around the city to allow that movement, any special movements of the vehicle, and also help us understand how long it's going to be to get around the route. That helps understand the lead time at the various stops and predict that. We'll also be working on the stops, the design concept for the stops. So we have Dr. Hans Butzer from University of Oklahoma engaged in our team. He's going to help us work through the architecture of the stops, and I'll show you some examples of those here in a minute. Also, the traction power analysis, that includes looking at the on and off wire sections. And as you may know, we selected a vehicle that will have batteries on it, and so there will be a minimum amount of off-wire capability in the system. So we have to factor that into where we need our substations that power the line, where they need to go, and so on. And we're going to do a preliminary analysis of that. All that will come together in a pre-design report that we're planning to put through the MAPS approval process in April of this year. Storage maintenance facility is really on the same schedule. Pre-design was authorized. We have an interim milestone to do some of the building programming, so we have some right sizing to do. I'll be talking to you about that quite a bit here in a minute. And then we'll also be bringing a pre-design report in April for approval to launch that into design. So that's the design status. Now, just to review the mainline route with you, you know that this thing is based on couplets. There's a couplet in Bricktown. There's a couplet to the north side in Midtown. And then it goes back and forth through downtown. So really that's what we have set up. It's what we call the Zeta alignment. That's the name of the alignment that came out of the alternatives analysis. And then we also have a few blocks of alignment to the south going down Hudson and down to 7th Street where the storage and maintenance facility would be. And that is currently not planned for revenue service. As soon as it goes south from Reno, there, just past the new convention center, the car would go out of service and it would head on down to the maintenance facility to park for the night or go for a scheduled maintenance type thing. So that's the way it's set up. I think that's pretty much it on the main line. Now the stop locations, right now we have, I'm going to say approximately 22 stops that we've identified. That's going to bounce around a little bit as we go through design because of the reasons really there on the right in those bullets. First of all, we have to confirm that the stops are going to fit where we think they're going to fit. We'd like them to be spaced generally a quarter to a third of a mile apart. And we want to be able to serve the major destinations with the stops. And one example of that is the intermodal hub, which is currently has some design activity going on. But if you look on there, you see we have stops right there north and south of the hub. They're in Sheridan and in Reno. And so we want that to be a couplet where if someone gets off at the hub, they can go to the north side and take an eastbound train into Bricktown, or they can go to the south side, take a westbound train over towards the Devon Tower. So those are we want those stops to be in a couplet, so that makes that work. We also want them to be adjacent to safe and convenient pedestrian connections, sidewalks and crosswalks and so on. And the transit hub is another good example of that. There'll be a promenade that runs north and south past that hub, and so we want that promenade to be able to connect easily to those stops so people can just walk down there and jump on the streetcar. We also want to avoid driveways and other in-street constraints, and that's something we're looking very hard at right now as we look at our topo maps and right-of-way maps and adjusting where that stop's going to fall in there. We have to look at the planned parking and on Broadway, automobile alley, some of those areas we have to make sure that all fits together. So that's the general idea on the stops. Now here's some examples of what they look like. The top two photos are from Portland and Seattle respectively. Those are, Portland is a well-established system, as you may know, and Seattle's putting in a new system. The one on the lower right is in Tucson. They just opened a few months ago. So what we're going to try to do, and this is what we're working with Dr. Bootser on, is to get the architecture to where it matches up with the different areas of Oklahoma City. We may have one concept, we may have a couple of different concepts. So that's what we're working through right now. And so it'll be something like this. It'll be some type of shelter. There'll be some type of next bus arrangement where it'll tell you the next train is due in so many minutes and that kind of thing. So they're pretty simple, but at the same time, the architecture is pretty important. So we're trying to focus on that as we work through the stop design. Now let me jump over to the storage and maintenance facility, and as you know, it's down there on the south end at the corner of 7th and Hudson. It's at the southwest corner. The city has procured that property, and so we're starting to lay out and program the facility for that site. We have some preliminary ideas of what that would look like. So here's a little bit of an idea of what we have, what the site would look like. You can see there the intersection of 7th and Hudson, and the car would proceed on south of 7th Street and then turn on into the maintenance part. And we have indoor areas, outdoor areas in the yard that have different functions, which I'll tell you about in a second. And then also you have your maintenance and shop area and some administrative facilities in there as well. So that's just a rough idea of what we have laid out next to the Union Station there. Here's a look at it from the park, which, as you probably know, is kitty corner from the maintenance facility location. So that's a rough idea of how the park would lay in and the view that you would have from the air looking down at that. So just to give you an idea of how the whole thing lays out. And these are all just very conceptual. The architects are just now really getting hard to work on this, and that will that facility size and space and everything will be confirmed. And we also have a budget limitation that we have to be careful to adhere to. All right, now I want to talk a little bit about each area within the building and the main programming areas that we do. We're going to look at the open area site requirements, the covered area site requirements, and then within the building, the maintenance facility itself and the administrative support, and figure out from an architectural standpoint how much space we need for all those different functions. In the open areas, we have the traction power substations. The photo on the top right is an example of that. It's a big transformer that converts from AC voltage into 750 volts DC, which is what the cars will run off of. We also have material storage, and you can see the list there. I won't read the whole thing. But anyway, one of the most important things we have to think about outside is the movement of the vehicles and have enough room to park everything, and not only for the 5 vehicles that are currently planned to be purchased, but also for the future expansion. So we have to think about all that. In the covered areas, of course, we want to store the vehicles in a covered area, try to keep them out of the hailstorms as much as possible, and also protect them, just keep them nice. We'll also have to think about the interior and cleaning and washing in those positions outside. And then one of the most important things that happens in those storage positions is, because they will be battery operated part of the time, is they're going to get charged up. So we have to figure out how we're going to do that, either using the overhead contact system or some kind of a plug-in for the vehicles to get them charged up. I guess think of these things like a hybrid car or electric car. I mean, they got to get charged up overnight so they're ready to go back online in the morning. So we have to think through how we're going to do that, and actually we're having so that just within the last couple of weeks had some discussions about that. Now, moving inside, we're planning to have a couple of maintenance bays. We have to be able to get to the vehicle from the top, which is where the batteries and some of the other things are located, and we have to get under it to get at the trucks and wheels to be able to remove them and work on. So really it's a top and bottom type operation, and we need to be able to do safety inspections, and then there's, of course, light or heavy maintenance involved there. We have to figure out how the wheels are going to be trued. That's a pretty regular operation that needs to be done, and so whether we're going to remove the trucks and send them off somewhere to be trued up, or if we're going to provide future flexibility for some kind of wheel turning operation there at the maintenance facility, we have to think about that as we plan out the space. And of course, we'll want to have some body shop or paint booth capabilities for some of the repairs, and then of course how they circulate in and out of the building. And we are planning on a couple of maintenance bays to take care of that. So what you might see on a normal, for the 5 vehicles, you might see 3 parked outside for the night and 2 parked inside in the maintenance bays for some kind of overnight maintenance or so on, just to give you a general idea. Now, in terms of the shop support, there's a whole list of things there that we'll be thinking about as we set up the shop, but we want it to be set up so that when Jason has his operators out there, or a contract operator has their mechanics that are ready to go, we basically need to think through everything they need for the maintenance that we're planning to do at this facility. So those are just examples of things that we're going to be thinking about as we program that shop space. And then finally, the administrative building and support, kind of a typical office arrangement, but we need to think about just things the operations group, the contractor, needs to be able to support the operations. So you can see there are a list of things we'll be thinking about as we set up that operational area for them. And there's some examples of kind of what that looks like, both from the outside and the inside. I think that's the Portland maintenance facility right there. They've got theirs actually tucked under a freeway, which is a real nice place for theirs. But anyway, that's just an example of what those things look like. Now, as far as the exterior, they've got to take a really good look at this, because it is next to that historic Union Station, and we want to make those 2 buildings get along as well as we can. So we'll be thinking about screening, landscaping, and potentially some masonry walls. Then also in terms of compatibility with the Union Station, in terms of massing, how does the mass and shape of the Union Station compare to the mass and shape of the maintenance facility, and how do they compare in scale, and then also, try to get the colors and materials to where they're somewhat compatible. So we're going to do our best to get those things to look good together, again, within our budget limitations. And then in terms of the park, we know that we are right across the street from the park, and so, as the architect has said, we want it to be contemporary and respectful to the space that's across the street from us. So I'm going to try to look at that. High quality, cost effective, it's always a challenge for the architects and for the budget that we have for this facility. We know it's going to be a challenge, but we will do our best for the budget that we have. And then, of course, reflective of the streetcar and OKC image, and Jason's going to be thinking about branding, and so we're going to try to line up with all those things. All right, so let me shift over and talk a little about the very important vehicles. So we put out an RFP last fall, and our goal was we wanted to engage as many vehicle builders as possible with an emphasis on off-wire capability. We knew that we had to have some off-wire capability. We weren't sure how much more we'd be able to get, so we put a criterion in there for the builders to respond to, and they included that in their proposals. And of course, we wanted it to be a fair and competitive process so that when we selected a builder, we knew that we had made a good selection. We got the proposals in on November 18th of last year, and we got 4 builders submitting: Innicon, Brookville, CAF, and XCMC. And then the evaluation committee, which was really a team of all-stars from around the city, they got together and looked at the proposals. Our Jacobs team kind of led them through the selection process and the scoring process, and everyone scored their proposals using a point system and the defined criterion that had been set before we opened the bids, and it was a unanimous decision for that selection committee, and that was that Innicon was the clear winner. So we also looked at the prices. They proposed a base price of $21.9 million. We had budgeted for $26. So that was a very good piece of news in terms of our budget situation for the overall Phase 1 part of the streetcar program, that we came in under on that. So now we can look at using that excess budget for other parts of the program. We did select a narrow vehicle. It is the 8-foot wide. We took proposals on both kinds, a wider vehicle and a more narrow vehicle. That affects the seating configuration, but it also affects the curves, the radius of the curves, and the clearances that we have from the parking areas like parallel parking and so on. So we're happy that we came up with the narrow vehicle, and so now our designers are planning on that as they lay out the main line. So we took this to council just recently, January 27th, and council authorized us to proceed with the negotiation with Innicon. So we are now in the process of drafting a contract and putting that in front of them with the various terms, delivery terms, milestones, and so on, along with the final pricing that we'll expect from them. That negotiation will probably go on for several months. Our goal is to have something around the middle of this year at some point, maybe a little bit into the fall, before we're ready to sign a contract with Innicon so that can actually start building it. Okay. All right, I'll talk a little bit about adjacent projects because, as I said earlier, there's a lot of other things going on that impact us. And the first one I'll talk about is the hub. They are proceeding into design, and we're coordinating with them on several respects, but most importantly, how they tie in with the stops that are located to the north and south of the hub facility. So we're just keeping up with that. And then, of course, right next to it is the EK Gaylord Project 180 project being designed by Tetra Tech. So we're coordinating with their team. And what's going to happen there is we're going to provide our rail alignment and details so that they can go ahead and build that track as they build EK Gaylord. Now, it's on a Tiger grant, and so the type of rail is probably going to be a little different. That's related to the Buy America requirement. But we're going to get that figured out, and we're going to get that rail in there and installed as they build EK Gaylord. Now, that is not planned to be on our route as it currently is, but we're getting it in there for the future. It's related to the grant, and so we want to go ahead and get it installed now. And there is a stop planned there across the street from the transit hub, but we're not planning to build that stop at this time. We're planning to go ahead and have the block out for it and have the rail in. That's as far as we would go for now. Then the convention center, of course, is there along Hudson, extends under Hudson between Reno and 3rd in that 2-block area. So this is a tricky one because we have to figure out how to get the convention center built under there. Then we have to build the Hudson Road project over the top of that. And then we have to build the streetcar rail on top of that. And all that's tied to putting the streetcar in service in 2018. So there's a lot of really tricky coordination to do there, and we are staying on top of that. And then also there affecting the Hudson alignment is the Boulevard project. So they're going to be doing the intersection there at Hudson Southwest 3rd. So we have to coordinate with them and make sure they understand what we need in terms of the alignment and grades for the track. So we get everything through that intersection just the way we need it. And what we'll probably do is build a notch out for when they build the road, and then when our streetcar installer comes in, they'll probably take a little bit of pavement out, lay the rails in there, pour the concrete, and then we'll be ready to go. We want really our mainline installer for the rail, we want them to put all the rail in as much as possible. And then there's the Hudson Street project. So that stretch from 3rd down to 7th, we need to also coordinate with the designer of that so that our track drawings and details go into there, and so they can build that notch out so that we can go in and lay the rail, overhead wire as needed, and go from there. And of course, then there's a park next to that, and we're coordinating with them in terms of the parking and the sequencing of everything. So all these projects are affecting us, and we're affecting them, and so we're all trying to talk to each other as much as possible. We meet once a month, and everyone goes over their schedules and what they need, and who's doing utilities and who's not and everything. So it's going pretty well. So we're going to stay at it. So here's what's coming next. We're going to submit our pre-design reports for the main line, the storage maintenance facility in the April approval cycle for MAPS and City Council. Then we're going to start into final design from May through on into February of 16. And also around the middle of this year, we're going to launch into a rail procurement package, because we will plan to purchase the rail separately and bring it in and stockpile it. And then when we get our mainline installer in, they'll go pull that rail out of the stockpile and start putting it in the ground. As I mentioned earlier, we're planning to have our vehicle contract signed somewhere around August of this year. And then construction, we'd like to get started next spring with a planned 2-year duration for putting in the main line, overhead wire, transformers, maintenance facility, all of that. And then, if everything comes together, and the vehicles get built, and we get them here, and we get our track built, and we get everything in Hudson and ready to go, we'll be ready to start commissioning in spring of 18 with the planned opening day in somewhere around summer of 2018. So that's looking forward. Now, just one last slide to tell you a little bit about some of the operational items. This is something we're working closely with Jason on. First of all, an operations and maintenance plan. And this is really what defines how many hours you're going to be operating, how many people it takes, what your budget is to do so, whatever. And we work with Jason to prepare a draft of that. And so that's one of his #1 things to do. That is in the works. And we also need to understand that so that as we design it, we make sure and design it for the way it's planned to be operated. The fare structure is one of the next things to come, and that's going to be a separate white paper or memorandum that we're helping Jason with. And then, Jason, I know you're going to be working on the branding, going to be working on getting the contract operator selected, and you're also going to be reviewing the storage and maintenance facility, since he's going to be the main one using it. And then as we get in further into the design and start in the construction process, there'll be a bunch of safety certifications that we have to do with ODOT and others to make sure that all the various regulators are comfortable that it's all been certified and ready for public use. All right. That is all I have to tell you today. So with that, happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. In looking at this photograph right here that's on the screen, is that an 8-foot wide car? I mean, when you say we're going to have a narrow car, are there differences within the definition of narrow, or are most of them who meet the definition of narrow 8 feet wide?
The 8 foot is the narrow by definition.
Okay.
And the photo you're looking at, I'm pretty sure is the Portland streetcar, which is the narrow.
Yeah. They look as narrow as just a traditional passenger vehicle almost. But I guess they're a little bit wider.
A little bit.
Yeah.
In the ballpark.
Do you know how often we have to have cross wires to support the main wire that goes the route of the streetcar? Is it like at every corner or every 100 feet you have to have a cross wire to support that?
I don't have the exact spacing off the top of my head,
Okay.
but it's not at every corner.
Okay.
There will be several supports within a block.
Okay. All right. And as the development hopefully continues with the size of batteries and the strength and the affordability, should we get to a point where batteries have evolved to where they could power the streetcars further than originally planned, do you feel comfortable that the streetcars could accommodate those updated batteries that would allow us to go further without the wires?
That's a good question, and as a team, we talk a lot about that because battery technology is changing quickly. Right now, we have the lithium batteries specified, but even within lithium battery technology, my understanding is that there are advancements being made, and so it's all about the longevity of the batteries and how far up you charge them and how deep you discharge them. So we have to play with the hand we're dealt right now.
Sure.
And we have to plan for the limits or the ranges of off-wire capability based on what we know right now. So that's what we're planning to do now. In the future, as battery technology advances, it is possible that it's going to be possible to do more with them, but it's hard to predict because it's such a changing thing. And really, I think that the group that put together the RFP for the vehicles struggled with this, and just how far are we going to push the technology and try to get something that's new and exciting, and it's this balance between getting something that's predictable, that you know what it'll do, and getting something that allows us to maximize a future benefit. So we're kind of right in the middle on that because, like I say, we have gone to hybrids. There are a lot of streetcar systems in the U.S. that don't have off-wire sections at all. And so we are going off-wire. We're going to take advantage of the capability as much as we can. And as we look at what we're comfortable with in terms of maximum off-wire capability, we have to model that. Our electrical engineers have to look at, the discharge portion of the batteries and the charging cycle of the batteries. And then, when it goes off-wire, it's discharging, maybe it's going uphill. So when it's going up to the north end, we're going uphill, and so we're pulling those batteries down faster, and then we catch up onto that wire and we're charging back up. So they have to look at that cycle, and they have to look at that literally hundreds of thousands of times, as those vehicles are making that route. And so what does that do to your battery life? And can you get what the manufacturer says they can get out of the batteries?
Yeah.
So that's probably more than you wanted to know.
No, that's helpful. One last question. Because we do have hailstorms here in Oklahoma City, you mentioned that you'd like to keep these streetcars inside during a hailstorm. Are they more susceptible, say, than a bus to damage when a hailstorm comes in? And a related question, would it make sense to, say, have a extended covering maybe on the north end of the route, just in case they get kind of caught in a sudden hailstorm, they could at least, come in and cover the top of it with that covering to protect them?
That's a good suggestion, and I appreciate that. But we will definitely take a look at that, because we are planning on the stop that's up at the hospital, up on between 10th and 11th Street, that would be a stop where we could pull out of the main traffic lane.
Yeah.
And so we will definitely ask the team to take a look at that. I think that's a great idea.
What do we do, Jason, currently with our buses when, there's storms coming through during the daytime when we're operating the buses? Do we ever suspend operations? And if we do, are the buses out on the routes, or do they all come back to the facility?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things, obviously depending on the severity of the storm. I mean, probably the best case, best example I can think of is, I believe it was back in spring of 2013 when we had the tornadoes come through. I mean, essentially what our dispatchers do is, they monitor that weather. There's a TV in our dispatch area. And in that particular case, we could see kind of how the storm was tracking, and we directed buses to essentially go the opposite direction, right? I mean, everything on one side of the storm, go this way, and the other side of the storm, go the other way, with the idea of trying to get those buses and the passengers to safety versus trying to scramble and bring them back in. Now, there are other times when we would, again, depending on the severity of the storm, just say, hey, stop where you are if an operator calls in. As far as like hailstorms and so forth go, our current facility, we don't have any covered parking for the buses if they happen to be on the grid, or the grid we call it, but basically the big parking lot.
Yeah.
And we've had a couple this spring, and amazingly enough, our buses have fared pretty well so far. That was one of my first questions to our maintenance manager this spring when a hailstorm come through on the weekend when everything was parked. Was what's the damage? And they were very, very resilient.
Good. Thank you.
I have a quick question, and it's related to the energy question that he asked. I know that there are two laboratories out there, one in Great Britain and one attached to Tesla, who are looking at that battery dynamics paradigm. Are we looking at vendors who might have existing relationships with those guys? I understand that especially at Tesla right now, there are batteries on the horizon, systems on the horizon that recharge those batteries in an ongoing kind of a basis, so that you don't have to go back to that energy source over and over and over again in order to bring those levels up. Are we looking at those folks in a way that might advantage us with this system, so that we don't have to have those cables above the heads of the folks who are downtown? If you know, can you answer that question?
I can tell you that I'm really proud of my team, and there are a couple of engineers on my team that could answer that question better than I could. I do believe that we are aware of the changes in battery technology, and we were going to try to work with Innicon to take advantage of any changes or anything new that might be available as we negotiate this contract. But we only have a few months left before we are ready to build this thing. Now, I can tell you one of the discussions that we've had is the Innicon is saying their batteries will last for 10 years. And if you and I were to put a bet on this, we'd probably both bet that those batteries won't be in there for 10 years. So, it's just changing too fast. But this is one of the discussions that we have to have with Innicon is it going to be flexible to hold the new batteries that are going to be available in 5 years that are going to do something new and better than what we have right now. Okay. So we have to be thinking about that, and we're trying.
Okay, one more question then. I've had a couple of conversations with folks in the Seattle system, and they, from time to time, have been plagued by some failures. Have we looked at what those failures in other folks' systems are, so that we might minimize that as it affects the folks who ride our streetcars?
Well, I can tell you that the team that we have is extremely familiar with both Portland and the Seattle systems, as well as others that are going in right now, like Detroit, Kansas City, Washington, D.C., and Tucson. So we have tried to put people in place on our team that understand that and can look forward at that. For example, Rick Gustafson on our team has helped us draft the operations and maintenance plan, which currently help Justin with, and he has done that for many of these different systems. So the O&M plan has a lot to do with anticipating those problems. So we are trying to stay ahead of it, and we are very familiar with those systems.
All right. I have one question, and we'll let you. What is the limit of the off-wire? I mean, how far can it go?
Well, that's a tricky question. Right now, we have a minimum and maximum scenario developed, which we'll be presenting in the pre-design report. So I can't say too much more about it because all that information needs to go through the approval process. But I can tell you that the minimum scenario will be, we'll have to come off wire under the BNSF underpasses. We know that for sure. So there'll be a stop, they'll lower the pantograph, they'll drive under the underpass, well, either on Sheridan or on Reno, and then they'll raise the pantograph at the next stop and continue on for the rest of the route. So the minimum scenario is those are off wire and everything else is wired. We're also looking at a maximum scenario, which will have more off wire than that, and we're trying to. We need to model that. We need to talk to Innicon about it to make sure they agree with our modeling, and so we don't want to get everyone all excited about how much off-wire we think we can do until the time is right. But I can tell you we are looking at doing more than just the underpasses.
But you're not going to be able to run the whole route off-wire?
We're not going to get the whole route. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions by any of the trustees? All right. Well, thank you very much. Very informative.
You're welcome.
We appreciate that.
Right.
Thank you. Yes, we have a citizen to be heard. If Michael, okay. And let me ask you, please, because of the length of our meeting and what we've had, if you would limit your remarks to 3 minutes, I would appreciate it.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and trustees. I'm Michael Hinton of 1729 Northwest 3rd Street, Oklahoma City, Oklahoma 73106. And in the interest of time, I'm going to make this very quick as I can. And the issues I'm bringing before this meeting today is concerns I've had in writing on the embark, the detours. I must say, I've never been to a city that dig up more streets like they do in Oklahoma City. I'm sure all of you will agree. But the point I'm making is that where embark signs are being posted now and where passengers may be there waiting for a bus to come by, we, the public, have no way of knowing if the bus has been on a detour. And I'll address some specifics, like at Northwest 23rd in MacArthur, and also Southwest 25th and Commerce, which would be on Route 14. And I'm proposing that I don't know, the city street maintenance would do this or not, or whoever would be, posting a sign of that at that location that the detour has been made, so we, the public, will know where to go to catch up with the inbound or outbound bus. The second one issue I'm bringing is that for the embark bus drivers be upgraded to full status as city employees rather than just being a trustee. And the details of this, in the interest of time, once again, I'll be sharing with Mr. Jason Pebrosh by way of email, sending the details and the proposal adopting a resolution on that particular issue. Also, is that I am pleased of the nighttime service, being adjunct professor at UCO. I am working with CityLink, maybe that they will work with Oklahoma City, is that for the nighttime service that we can have commuter service going from Edmond to Oklahoma City, that we the citizens, no, not we the citizens, but I'm a citizen of Oklahoma City, but commuters in Edmond as well as Oklahoma City can have a means of commuting between the two townships to at nighttime, and routes 11 and routes 23, those are proving to be very impressionable, and I'm very happy to see that nighttime service. And I salute you folks for the fact is you're making an effort that at least maybe we can restore some nighttime service in full scale. Thank you very much for your time, and it's good to be in your midst.
We have one.
Oh, we have another citizen be heard? No, I don't think he was.
Yes, Mr. David Smith, I believe, turned in a...
Okay. Oh, excuse me.
Yes, my name is David Smith. I'm a resident of Oklahoma City. Appreciate the opportunity to address you all today. Today I'll focus solely on the solutions. No complaints,
Would
nothing
you
else.
speak into the microphone, please, so
Sure.
we can hear you?
You know, every little kid in town knows the sound of an ice cream truck. Pop goes the weasel, right? Pop goes the weasel. The little kid's got enough time to go beg his mother or father for ice cream and get out there in time to catch the ice cream truck. But our patrons walk up and down the street and for the sound of that diesel motor, right? There goes the trash truck. There's the commercial truck. Oh, here goes the bus. Transfer penalty. Here we are in 2015, and every single bus patron must walk to the official bus sign looking over his or her shoulder. A simple exterior speaker placed on the passenger side mirror turned 7 degrees with a melody would give these patrons half the chance to get to the... Now, they may not stop for them, okay, but at least we'd have an opportunity. Sound good? Simple to do, cost effective, safety and service. 2, IDs, everybody, from the director on down, operators. Why? Because if you hide them in your pocket, it's not a good idea. If you display them openly, right there on the bus, this alone promotes safety, public respect, accountability, and professionalism. 2, improper display for the buses. I note the mayor's not here again. Improper tag display is a violation of law. City, state, and federal, many embarked buses have no paint on their plates. They're worn out, gentlemen, ladies. They've worn off. Replace them and comply with the laws just like we do. If we drive down the street and we don't have a proper display tag, city officials pull us over and we're ticketed or arrested. Let's obey the law, please. Trainers are instructing new operators to break the law and risk public and patron safety by speeding. Route 5, quote, "This is where you make up time when you're falling behind." Route 22 trainer, quote, "Now you can take her home. I can't tell you what this means, but you'll understand." Trainer of new operator on board 22. Board members, last month I asked you to ride your own bus system. I did not see one single member here on the bus. I repeat this request again. It's just about safety and service. That's it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could real quick, I don't know about anybody else on this up here, but my wife and I from time to time do get on the buses. I don't know that it's so much that we have to, but it's a little convenient for us in a lot of cases. And I find most of the folks who drive the buses that we do ride they're nice folks. They greet me with a hello, they greet me with a smile, and they do basically what I need for them to do, which is deliver me from point to point. Now, my wife did mention in the last week or two something about a bus that didn't have a tag where it was supposed to be, but life is what it is, and things do happen, and I'm sure that Jason and his guys, as soon as you guys out there in the citizenry bring this to their attention, they're going to deal with these items. Part of the problem that we have, and I've mentioned this before, is that when I come and sit here, there might be one or two guys who sit out there who are from the marketplace, citizens who come in here and have a conversation with us. Every now and then I get a telephone call from folks who have something that they would like to bring to this group of folks to just have a conversation about. I'm open to have conversations about anything relative to what we do here any time of day, 24/7. It's what the mayor and the city council have asked me to come here to do. I volunteered to do it. I give my time. Nobody pays me a penny to come here and do this. In fact, it takes away from my family when I come to do it, and I love my family a whole lot. But I'm willing to have any kind of a conversation about anything that is relative to what all of us here do on an ongoing basis. So if you have a problem, call these guys. Say there's a problem that exists in your system, and whatever you can do to fix it, we're going to try and do. Forgive me for taking so much.
No, I appreciate your comments, and I think that is true. Anytime a citizen has had a comment or a concern and has taken it to any of the staff, I think it's been resolved. That's their job. They're there to do it. We're here to listen when we're here to listen, but the staff is the one that needs to.
So with respect, last time I was told that this idea about paying for bus passes with a debit card was already taken care of. And I was assured that was a done deal. Sir, that's not a done deal. I can go down to the bus station today and I still cannot use my debit card. Now, if it's good for the parking meters and it's not good for our patrons, there's a disconnect. It's called discrimination.
That had been brought up, and that they are working on trying to get that resolved at the transfer station, and that it will be done. It has not been done.
And it would start right at the very front with the person that's greeting at the terminal, a person that smiles, a person who has respect, a person who treats these people with respect. Gentlemen, I'm going to close with this. Mental illness, homelessness, and unemployment are not crimes. They're situations. They're conditions. Anyone, anywhere can and very well may find this staring back at themselves in the mirror. Therefore, it is more imperative than ever that we view, address, honor, and respect those who are suffering, for us to solemnly endeavor not to scoff, not to punish, not to shun, not to disrespect, not to arrest and not to imprison, but instead to offer kindness, generosity, hope, compassion, charity, respect, and love to every one of these patrons, sir.
Thank you.
Everyone. And that way we can have $130 million.
The staff is not trained to do what you're saying. The staff is trained to be courteous.
Good.
And be.
Excellent.
That is
We're on the same
purpose. So
pole.
thank you very
sir.
much. All right, let's move on to our consent docket. We've got a good number of items on the consent docket. Oh, the minutes. We never did approve those. Move approval. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Item A, we're pulling item A on the consent docket because we did not get the contract back in time. And I know Jason would like to comment on item D. Are there any of the other items any of the trustees would like to comment on? Jason?
Item D is an amendment to the Kimley Horn contract for the parking study that they're currently working on for us. And just as an information item, we have asked them to go back and take a little bit closer look at the proposed garage for the Convention Center Hotel. That was in the initial study that they did, but again, we're just asking them to go back and take a little bit closer look. do a little bit of a peer city analysis, look at some of the actual conventions that we've had here in our city, along with what can be expected with a new convention center, and essentially just provide us a little bit more analysis on that particular part of the study.
And when's that to be completed? Is there a timeline? Or?
With the additional work, I believe we're hoping in April we'll have a report.
If there's no other questions, we'll need the consent docket.
Move approval on the consent docket.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Our items for individual consideration, item A, I think Jason's going to make comment, and then if we would, the next 5 items, Debbie, if you just kind of clarify all the next 5 items in one report, I'd appreciate it. Item A.
Item A is a task order with Triad Design Group. They're our engineer of record. This is the beginning of our sprinkler system project at our maintenance facility at 2000 South May. As you'll recall, the fire sprinkler system is a project that's in our 5-year capital plan, was approved by the trustees in July, and was scheduled for this fiscal year to begin. So this is the start of that project that's been approved.
Is there a motion to approve item A? All in favor? Opposed? All right, Debbie, if you would, the next 5 items, and then we can vote on them.
Okay.
Do we have to vote on them separately? We do.
Okay, and in interest of time, I'll just kind of quickly, if you have questions, you go ahead and ask.
Okay.
Item B was the consideration of approval of change order 10. These are mainly some housekeeping items. It also extended the time for the Arts District Garage 31 days, and we had a deduction of $3,000 plus, with the total number being $50,958.
Go on, cover all the items, and then we'll...
Oh, you may, okay.
Yeah, if you would.
Item C was amendment number 3 to the contract with Lippert Brothers for the structural repairs at Century Center. During the preliminary investigation, they were not able to get up into the helicline areas to do extensive testing. So when we started the repairs, when they got up there and once it was closed and was able to do some screening, there was a little more damage than was initially thought. So that's the amendment, is to increase the contract amount for additional repairs. And then item D is the final acceptance for that project. We're actually, we did a final walkthrough. The structural repairs, I'll have some pictures just real quickly in my report so you can see the final product. But that project now is finished. As you remember, we are also covering the beams and painting those. That's still ongoing. We are hoping to have parkers in the garage next week on a couple of the floors. Item E is amendment number 1 to the contract with Restec. This is the work being done at Sheridan Walker. We found some tendons that needed to be replaced during that construction, so that is the reason for the additional cost of, $19,362. Yeah, see. Okay, and then item F was when we built the Arts District garage. As you remember, we had the design, the architects design the first floor as a gray box only. Now that we have interest in the retail space, and actually we have it all leased out tentatively, working with TAP on the design. So this RFB is for the plans and specs for phase 1, which is about 65% of the retail space for the build-outs.
Any questions? Debbie?
Okay, on item number B, the 35 additional days, we'll get to the financial report and talk about the revenues being down because the Arts District garage wasn't open. Do we seriously take a look at the number of days that the contractor had and weigh in the fact that we weren't able to have that revenue for 31 days?
That has already been negotiated with the contractor, with Public Works. Those were legitimate weather days that they had not been turned in. There is a $3,000 or the $3,000 deduction for some change of scope for that compensation. Not what we would like, but that was,
Okay, well, but we do seriously take a look at that.
Okay.
Okay, on the item C, the contract with Lippert Brothers for the structural repairs, that's another 10% of the cost of the
that's
whole
an
project?
amendment. That was an amendment. That was just a quantity change, which is not under the change order.
Helical repairs, am I not looking at the right one? C.
You're correct. The increase for the amendment was roughly 10%, close to 10% of
We
the...
didn't have any idea that we were going to have 10% of the cost of the project in problems before we get in there and handle them as change orders.
Based on what our engineer is telling us is that they, as Debbie had mentioned, they were not able to do as much testing as I guess maybe they needed to do while the garage was open, and they were determining what the estimate would be. And again, once they got in there, the garage was closed. They started repairing the concrete. It's just, yes, it's a significant amendment in terms of dollar amount. At the same time, it just entailed having to remove and replace a lot more concrete than what they had anticipated. And that's why we brought it to you as an amendment versus a change order, which would...
That's to get it by the state law. I understand that part of it, but the 10% just seems like a big amount not to have anticipated it in the beginning. Rather than
Understood.
Towards the end.
I have a quick question relative to that also. 10% seems, I'm not going to say exorbitant, but it seems to be quite a bit. Was there some sort of documentation generated by those engineering inspections that the city engineers could go through and take a look at to make sure that we are holding to what all of us would expect to happen on that facility?
If you'd like, I have our engineer here, Robbie, with Triad Design, and he might be able to explain the process and what we did negotiate with the contractor, I believe.
During design, Triad Design Group, we subcontracted with White Engineering, and they went out and they inspected the garage. The helicline on the south and north entrance, they were able to do a visual inspection as they walked up, and then from the bottom, but on the top, he was able to drag a chain the best he could. And then once the contractor physically shut the garage down and started jackhammering in a spot, say we had a 5x5 spot, well, that spot would just grow, and we had to make the repair. And so when that started happening, the decision was made to do a thorough inspection while we had the garage completely shut down and make sure that we took care of everything that needed to be done.
Okay, my question is there documentation at every phase of this? Are we shooting video of it? Are we writing it down? Are we
Yes,
engineers?
sir. Part of Triad Design Group, we have an inspector on site that has done daily inspection reports. One can go and see what square footage was repaired. And so we are able to track those quantities and go over them with the contractor as he gets it complete. And so that's how we agree on what this final quantity overrun was. It wasn't like he just did it and gave us a number and we accepted it. We were out there every other day, keeping track of what it was.
We would not be opposed to approaching Public Works and having them look at our project if that, would alleviate some of the concerns or at least address, your point of having someone else look at it or validate it.
I'm
to that
just,
effect.
I'm in favor of documentation to support anything that gets done that involves spending money. And if we're going to spend more of the people's money on anything that we do, then there ought to be some sort of documentation that supports spending that money so that everybody, not just us, the mayor, the people out there who live in Oklahoma City, if they want to come and say, you know, why did you do this, then there ought to be something to show why we did it.
And absolutely, that's a part of all of our processes, whether it's managed through Public Works or it's a purchase, that there's documentation that whether it's our project managers that are reviewing this on our behalf and they're working for us, representing us, and working with the contractors, that's definitely in place.
You know, and two, you know, this is I mean, the method we use to manage this project isn't any different than we've really used for any of our other projects. It is understood and heard, though, that, you know, one of the concerns with this particular issue is the amount, and understandably so, 10% over the original contract amount. And so I would recommend, and maybe taking this to the point of we meet with the Finance Committee and determine if there's a threshold where, you know, we want to change our procedure and bring this to the trustees, you know, prior to going any further in the project, if there's some concern with, you know, the 10% over.
My issue really has to do with just identifying it early enough so that we can plan for that money rather than have it be a surprise of 10% at the end. And I trust that the procedure is being followed at that point, that we identify additional expenses, but I just thought it was a big amount to be surprised with at the end rather than plan for at the beginning.
And I just want you to know we fully understand what it is you're saying. I believe we've repaired the garages. We're doing Sheridan, and we've done a couple of others. But sometimes if we do, we will just add additional quantity that could be used, and we just didn't do it on this project. So, but if you haven't been to the garage, it looks almost brand new. I think it's going to serve the city well for many years to come. Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions of Debbie before we vote on the items? All right, thank you. Do I hear a motion to approve item B? All in favor? Opposed? Item C.
Move approval.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item D. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Item E. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Item F. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Thank you. All right, our next item is ratification of claims and payroll for January 1st through January 31st. Unless any of the trustees have any specific questions, then I would have a motion to ratify. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, our financial reports for the first 6 months. Jason was going to make just a couple comments on it, and then we can move on to our program reports.
Okay, on your financial reports, if you'll look at page 2, and I'll talk about the finances by each of our separate divisions. Page 2 is our transportation division. A couple of things to point out is our operating revenues. If you look at our revenues derived from, it's our passenger revenue, which is essentially what comes in through the fare box and the pass sales and so forth. We are about 5.7% over what we had projected. That's up from about 3% when we looked at the November financials. And we would expect some of that when we look at our ridership, and about an 8% increase through the first 6 months. We would expect our passenger revenue, obviously, to at least follow that trend. On our federal grant revenue, you'll notice that we are under budget by $240,000. Again, just as a reminder, all of our federal grant revenue comes in on a reimbursement basis. We project what our reimbursements are going to be actually a year ahead of time. The shortfall here is attributable to some planning, some reimbursements we receive for planning activities that we do as an agency. we actually received that reimbursement in January. That was roughly $227,000. So again, it's kind of a timing more than anything with that shortfall that you see. And then I think probably moving on to parking, page 3, looking at our parking division. Again, talking about our operating revenues, you'll notice that we are roughly $200,000 under budget on parking revenues. And again, as mentioned, that is attributable to the fact that when we developed our budget, we anticipated the Arts District Garage being open for the entire year. What I would like to point out, though, is we have closed that gap significantly since our November financials, which was the first month we had the Arts District Garage open for the full month. When we looked at our November financials, our revenue gap was $332,000. We've now closed that down to $200,000. So I would anticipate as the garage continues to fill and we move on further through the fiscal year, that gap hopefully will narrow and close even more. Looking at our operating expenditures, you can see that not much has changed since last month. They're all essentially in line with budget or under budget. And then I would direct your attention to the line that reads excess of operating income after payments and transfers. You'll see an amount of $970,184. And what that is, that's as you take all of our operating revenue plus our operating expenditures, what we've set aside for debt service on the new garage. We're still to the good by that amount. So that's obviously good for our parking system. And then moving on to the River Cruises division, a couple things to point out here. And we'll be talking more about the river operation in coming months, of course. Our passenger revenue is actually down about $45,000. When I say down, it's actually coming in under budget. That's for two reasons. One is I think we're a little bit aggressive when we projected our initial revenues for this fiscal year. But then secondly, as you'll recall, we suspended service in December, which would have generated some revenue. December is historically a pretty low ridership month for us, and what we've really been working, Jeannie and Hornblower have been working together, is trying to manage that expenditure budget, making sure that we do not exceed that expenditure budget. And so obviously the expenses would have far outpaced the revenues we would have been able to generate in December. So then I direct your attention to the operating expenditures, and you'll notice that if you roll them all up, we're at 102.1% of our budget. But I'll take you back a couple of months, and if you go back even in August, we were at 105%. September, we were at 109% of our budget. October, 106%. November, we dropped to 104%, and now we're at 102%. So we're really trying to concentrate our efforts on trying to manage within that expenditure budget, and we'll be continuing to keep you updated on that throughout the rest of the fiscal year. With that, I'll be glad to answer any other questions about the financials.
On that river, Jason, the City of Oklahoma City Transportation Fund, $93,000 under payments and transfers.
Yeah, that's for the personnel and administrative support that goes into the operation. The expenses are actually recorded in our what we call our 1100 operating unit, or our transit operating unit. We transfer funds. It's basically a transfer to offset those admin and personnel costs from managing the river.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? If not, do I have here motion to
Mr.
receive?
Chairman, may I just ask one question? I'm sorry. Jason, going back to the transportation division, would the fuel costs be listed under supplies, under operating expenditures?
Yes, they would be. In fact, that's one of the reasons why our supplies are coming in under budget.
And most of our fuel's diesel, which is not seen as significant of a decline in pricing as what refined gasoline has. So, but we have a 21% reduction in budgeted expenses in that area.
Right, and if you look at that, roughly $450,000 less than what was expected, about $170 of that is attributable directly to what we've been able to save in fuel.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Do I hear a motion to receive?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. All right, our program reports, our transit system report.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to make note, each of the trustees should have received a handout of an updated transit system report. We did have a column of data in one of the tables in the back that had not been updated, so we've got that corrected. I just wanted to point out that's the one that I'll be talking from this morning. Just real quickly, hit a couple of highlights from the transit system report. For December, our ridership was 10,623 passenger trips on average with our Monday through Friday service. That compares to 9,089 passenger trips on average a year ago. That's roughly a 17% increase when you compare the 2 months. So now, keeping in mind, last December, we didn't have near as nice a weather as what we've had this December, so bad weather days were a little bit of an impact, but I think you'll notice that the increase in ridership that we've seen when we've been looking at our graph in the past has continued on through December. In terms of Saturday ridership, you'll note in your report similar situation with bad weather days. In December of 2014, this current fiscal year, we averaged 4,500 passenger trips on Saturday. That compares to 3,500 a year ago. And again, just to explain that variance, we don't have very few Saturdays in that month. We had 2 of our Saturdays last year where we would consider, bad weather days. So that always pulls our ridership down. So that's a little bit of an anomaly, just for you to be aware of. Monday through Friday Discovery service, as well as our Saturday Discovery service, was relatively flat. If you look at our cumulative fixed route ridership through 6 months, we've provided 1.5 million passenger trips. And then the other thing I wanted to hit real quick is in regards to safety, we had 0 preventable accidents in the month of December, and if you'll recall, I reported 6 and 4 respectively in October and November, and so it's good to see that number has come down in December. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
All right, no questions. Then parking system, or long range, excuse me. They're coming at me from both directions.
Yeah, because I want to respect your time. In January, we were able to participate in a kickoff conference call with the U.S. DOT and the 5 other cities that were selected as beta test pilot cities for that Healthy Principles and Transit Corridor Planning Project. And that went well. One thing we learned is that of those 5 cities, we and another city are actually we're doing a transit corridor. The rest were basically roadway corridors and the like. We're not ready to really get going on that process yet. This is all pretty new, but we're getting closer to the starting point. Just a quick comment about night service. That was one of the things that your long-range plan was suggesting years and years ago, and gosh, to have those 2 routes out there is great. Others will have more to say, but one kind of perspective is, that's probably in excess of 25 miles along the street somewhere where a person can actually catch a bus. So that's a pretty significant swath of the city. In terms of just partnership activities, just wanted to mention that we are in the process of providing the Oklahoma City Planning Department some comments on the Connect OKC element of the Plan OKC. And with that, if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Well, I want to compliment, and I know you were heavily involved along with all the other staff with our breakfast yesterday morning with the visitor, with the president and CEO of APTA, and I thought it was very beneficial. All of us there, we learned a lot about it. And thank you for all your involvement in getting that plan. So.
Well, it was great to be part of pointing it out, but really I think that Michael probably played the major role in trying to get that coordinated. It was a great.
Well, I saw you running around there doing all kinds of things. So, all right, our parking system report.
Okay. In your report, you'll notice one thing I do want to point out. If you'll notice for December 13, the difference in the event revenue, just to kind of let you know, that is due to a thunder payment. And so sometimes, if you'll remember, like a couple months ago, we had that large amount for event revenue for this year. So it does fluctuate when they pay and when we bill. So that is the reason for the difference. We've had the same events and different things like that. So that was the increase. I just wanted to quickly, I've got some pictures kind of going along with the final acceptance and the amendment that we discussed. First, as you know, we put in a new deck, a completely new deck in the -2 level, so that's kind of showing that. The project that we have ongoing now, as you notice there on the left, you can see that old fireproofing and stuff like that. So that project, Downey Construction, is removing all of that. And then the next picture, you'll see they went in, removed all the fireproofing, and they've stripped those beams, and they've painted them. They look brand new. I mean, it just looks wonderful down there. They'll finish that up this week, and then striping, they'll begin striping next week. This is part of showing the new floor. If y'all remember on the 3rd floor what it looked like with the old waterproofing that was falling up, looked like felt paper and things like that. And then again, here's another one of the floors. And then this is the top floor, resurfaced. And this is part of that amendment. As Robbie was saying, when they started going in and breaking up and jackhammering that, the damage, it's like, where do you stop? It's kind of like painting. You're like, where do I start that line at? And so that was the experience. And so if you go, and especially as he was talking about on the south helicline, that's where all the vehicles are coming into the garage, bringing in the salt, bringing in all the chemicals off of the street, and that's where we had all the damage. As you can see, that is on the top of the helicline, where they had soaked through, from the floor above. And so if you drive in there now, you'll notice that it's almost the entire helicline. You'll see those repairs, and that is the part of that amendment. And let's see, Sheridan Walker, we're pretty much wrapping that one up as well. It's like I can breathe. No construction projects except for Santa Fe. The elevators, that is ongoing. They're doing replacement of those. And that's pretty much where we are in parking.
Once we get all this done.
I'm going to do construction build out at the Arts District Garage. I'm not giving up my hard hat yet.
You can go to sleep 8 hours tonight and then get up tomorrow and start working on that garage. Yeah.
All right, thank you, Debbie. Marketing?
Well, good morning. Want to just bring a couple of things to your attention. We are planning to participate in the Open Streets event that will take place March 22nd, so next month. We'll be participating in that again. That's the second event that they've held. It's on a Sunday. It's from 12 to 4. And last year, I remembered that they just anticipated, to hopefully have a couple of thousand people out there, and ended up having, I think, over 10,000 for sure. So we really expect a great event again, and we expect that we'll have a bus there, and more than likely Spokies will be there again. And that's just a great opportunity for you to also come out and kind of see the interaction and pedestrian activity that can take place, especially in the Uptown District that has so much renaissance going on in itself. And then just wanted to make you aware that our online store where passes will be sold will be up and live beginning Monday. We have done all the testing, and that was completed this week. And so passengers and visitors will be able to use our website to be able to purchase fares and have that sent to them. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Well, I saw the remarks from the reporter for the Oklahoma Gazette when he rode the evening service, and there was a lot of really favorable remarks about that service.
Yeah, we had great coverage. We're very appreciative of the Gazette and Ben Felder for actually coming out and riding, and he also did some follow-up rides later that week, and we just continue to receive a lot of good comments, but I think the results are going to be that people are able to use it to make money.
On that same note, at my wife's church on Sunday, a couple of folks came up and talked about how great they thought that evening service was in terms of allowing them a lot more flexibility on their job to be able to take the overtime when it's offered, to be able to, a couple of folks were saying that now they are able to look at third shift work because they're able to get there now. And so I think it's a great deal. And the event on 23rd Street. Boy, that thing was fun last year, and I'll bet it's going to be even more fun this year.
Yeah, it should be a good time. One comment we did receive from a rider when I was riding on Route 11 in the evening is that she got off work late. It was great that it would help her get home, but it actually allowed her to go visit her grandson before bedtime. And it was going to be able to start a new tradition. And I thought that was a great human interest story just to tell that it's also about just reconnecting with family and not missing out on parts of their life.
David?
Michael, if it's been mentioned at the city council meetings that we perhaps try to encourage our citizens to ride the bus even when they don't have to, when they could drive, get them to think in terms of riding the bus as an alternative, and just focusing on the downtown community with total employment between 40 and 50,000. If we could generate 20,000 new riders at some point in time, that would generate over $14 million in revenue for our system. Granted, there'd probably be additional expenses, but that would pretty well eliminate the need for the city to subsidize the transportation section of our trust. And perhaps we could partner with neighborhood associations, maybe civic groups throughout the city's area, special interest groups like ULI, to help us jointly promote the concept of riding the bus even when you could drive, to see if we could try to improve the overall usage of the system. It's a great system. I enjoy it every time I get on the bus, so we just have to help other people understand that.
Well, I think your support and your comments that you've made and the council's continued support and actually coming out and showing up at open streets and also just advocating that on your own level has been a tremendous help, and we greatly appreciate that. And we'll continue to strengthen and focus on those relationships, as you mentioned, with those individual groups to hopefully get to that and achieve that goal. Absolutely.
Now, David, you promised me you wouldn't wear both hats when you came to this trust meeting.
Okay. Well, I think we'd all feel better from a trustee standpoint knowing that we're more self-sufficient.
I agree.
Because you just can't depend on that city government, for everything. The more we wing ourselves from that, I think the better off we'll be.
Thank you. All right, our river cruises. You've been sleeping good at night, nothing going on, is there?
It's all quiet on the river. It's very cold, too. I just wanted to highlight that we did have a successful year as far as ridership last year. We continue to look for efficiencies in the service to reduce expenses, reduce hours of operation, and gain riders per service hour. And also this year, for the 2015 season, which starts in early April, we'll be extending the amount of time that we spend, or the number of trips that we take down to Meridian, so that these folks, we've gotten a lot more traffic from folks staying at the hotels at Meridian, and previously they could get on around noon, but they had to be headed right back at 5. Now they can stay till 9. So we think that's going to help build traffic from the developing hotels in the Meridian corridor. And we have met with marketing, and we're very close to finalizing a marketing plan for 2015, and it looks like it's going to be a very productive year. Just a note about Spokies. Spokies is also participating in Open Streets. Our new operator is on board. Brent's here with us today, the general manager for Bicycle Transit Systems Oklahoma, and he's been very active in creating some events for Spokies to gain some awareness around the city, and also been helping with the expansion plan and the revamp of the bicycles and the fleet to get us ready for this spring and summer. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Well, I was in New York last week, and a big article of how they're expanding their Spokie system, and it makes us kind of look bad. They were like adding 20,000 or something. So.
Yeah, they have a very large funding source.
All right, any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, do I hear a motion to receive our program reports? All in favor? Opposed? All right. All right, I know it's been kind of a long meeting, but I think it's been very productive and enjoyed some of the information we got. And all the trustees have had a chance to speak, but if you have any last words of wisdom for everybody. Oh, no, I thought we'd get by you.
You're never going to get away from this. As I guess I've kind of gotten into the habit of doing at the end of these things, once again, I'm going to thank Jason and all the people who work on his staff, because they are the guys who drive this thing forward. They are the guys who are making the possibility for this entity to be a standalone possible. The ability to have less road calls, the ability to keep our buses on the road, the ability to meet and greet those folks out there with a smile on their face, and to provide a service that is so necessary for those folks in the marketplace. Again, I'm going to say thanks to you, and thanks to all those guys behind you who push this thing forward.
Thank you.
I just wanted to congratulate Trustee Greenwell on his reelection to the City Council, ensuring his continued participation as a trustee and the ability to wear two hats at once.
Jason?
Nothing.
No? Oh, my goodness. All right. I hear a motion to adjourn. Second.